Thank you for that half-hearted applause, that sitting ovation. I appreciate that. I've had... See what happens when you beg. I could be an occupier or something. Anyway, thank you for laughing. Madam, would you sit in every seat, please? We got so many great people here today. When I pulled in the parking lot, I looked around. I didn't see too many cars. I said, geez, the sports luncheon this year is probably about as popular as an Italian carnival ship captain. I can't believe that guy's Italian. I mean, after all, Marconi invented the radio, right? I mean, we got Da Vinci and all those good people. They make great cars, great suits, terrific food. Anyway, sorry to diverse myself, but anyway. Panel, why don't you come up and I will introduce you as you sit here and are gazed upon by this wonderful audience here. We could have had Jim Murray up here, too. Former general manager of the Eagles. Say hi to Jim Murray. Very responsible for the McDonald houses all over the country. He's just been a bulwark of getting that charity up and running and going, and it just continues to thrive. So, Jimmy, we all owe a debt to you. You've been a great citizen. Our format today now will be a series of topics pertaining to our local sports teams. We could discuss some national topics too, and later on we will invite some questions from the audience if you're all still awake, and I hope that's true. All right, our panel now. Get to the page here. We got a lot of Temple grads up here. I'm beginning to wonder if there are any other colleges in the country. But anyway, the Temple grad, an outstanding sports writer, author, film writer, producer, radio, TV commentator, and too many awards to mention. Among them, voted into the Writers Division Honor Roll in the National Football League Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Among his many books, he co-wrote the Eagles Encyclopedia with Bob Line in 2005. And early in his career was sports writer for the Bulletin and was sports writer of the year 5 different times. He's also a Comcast TV analyst, does Eagle post-game TV shows, pre-game shows. He has written and produced for NFL Films. Ladies and gentlemen, Ray Didinger. A top-notch athlete at North Texas State, drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in 1976. Boo. As a defensive back, hey, Beasley knows it well. Believe me, he's probably borne the brunt of that one. He had a sparkling 9-year career in the NFL, playing for the Giants in Tampa Bay as well. He became a football commentator, joined TV stations in Hartford and Tampa before landing at NBC and CBS as an analyst in the NFL games. And KYW-TV lured him to Philly, where he became the sports director in 1998. Boy, time really flies. And is heavily involved in the pre- and post-game Eagles shows. Also swings a very mean golf club. If he's not a scratch golfer, he's pretty darn close. And he's the guy that makes very few bogeys. In this room especially. Beasley Reece. In no particular alphabetical order, Mr. Invincible, an early track star in high school, won a track scholarship at St. Joe's, specializing in the pole vault. After college, he played semi-pro football, leading him to the Philadelphia Bell of the upstart World Football League back in the 70s, where he was a receiver, but mainly a special team standout because of his exuberance. I know all about it because I used to do the play-by-play of those games until they threw us all out. The Eagles coach, Dick Vermeil, gave him a tryout. He made the team in 76, played in 41 games until 79 when injury forced retirement. But he made his Eagles mark as captain of the special teams and became the league's oldest rookie at age 30. Unbelievable. His inspiring story led to a movie starring Mark Wahlberg, and now is an executive, and he's also involved in many charities. Our pal, Vince Papale. Philly native and Temple grad, and later U.S. naval officer. An athlete in his own right. He was a junior tennis champ, a walking backboard. I know. I tried to run his balls down all day long. It would drive me crazy. And now an avid golfer who was always in the fairway. He broke into broadcasting at suburban stations after college at Temple. He joined WIP Radio as a sports reporter and took over the Eagles play-by-play in 1977, meaning that he just completed, if I counted it right, his 31st year as the Eagles broadcaster?
35th.
35th? Holy cow. I'll have to go back and look at my calculator again. Something's wrong somewhere. It's always the calculator's fault, it's not mine. And his distinctive voice is recognized nationally. He is tied with the Patriots' Gil Santos as the longest-serving NFL announcer. And he is also a co-owner of WBCB in Levittown. He's authored several books, and in addition, he is busy with numerous charitable organizations. My golfing buddy, despite the fact that he's still beating the hell out of me, Merrill Reese. Yet another Temple grad joining the media. He worked at a local radio station before joining KYW as a writer, but he moved to WHYY's Delaware News, where he met his wife, Sue Serio. Take a bow, Sue. In 1994, he became a sports TV anchor in Buffalo, but he earned a return to Philly, and he joined Fox TV Channel 29 as sports anchor, and at the time was an Emmy nominee 5 different times, and also wife Sue became and is the popular weather forecaster at Channel 29. He left the station in 2009 and currently has his own production company, Bill Vargus. Finally, another Temple grad, longtime sports enthusiast. He became sports director at a station in Harrisburg, concentrating much coverage on Penn State. He joined KYW Radio as a reporter in 2007, covering events around the Delaware Valley. He's an avid, well-conditioned sports fan. He competes in triathlons. I get tired just watching those guys. One of his life's highlights is that he donated one of his kidneys to his aunt, Jim Melwert. All right, we're going to talk mainly about our local teams, Phillies, 76ers, Flyers, and, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. So we'll start with Ray here. We'll go with the Eagles first because it seems that there are a few things going on here in the offseason. A very disappointing season in many respects, a lot of blown leads in the final quarter. And right now, Ray, there's word that Marty Morningwig, the offensive coordinator, is being looked at very closely by both the Oakland Raiders and the Indianapolis Colts, and just wondered to get a feel as to what you think might happen there.
Well, the Eagles had, statistically, if you look at since Marty's been here as the offensive coordinator, their stats have been really good in terms of yardage. They've set the team record for most total yards a couple times over since Marty's been calling the plays. So he's well regarded around the league as an offensive coordinator. He still has the baggage of having been a failed head coach in Detroit. And, I mean, his record in Detroit, he only won 5 games in 2 seasons. So maybe that's far enough in the rearview mirror that these teams are willing to look past it. I kind of think that he's a bit of a long shot as far as being a head coach right now, although the Oakland Raiders have interviewed enough people right now that it looks like they're not a real hot destination, so maybe Marty will be a consolation prize coach. But my guess right now is I still think Marty's – I think he's going to get interviewed, he's going to get talked about, but my feeling is I don't think he's going to be a head coach, at least not now. Maybe a couple years down the road, but I think he'll be back with the Eagles next season. And while I've got you here, how about defensive coordinator? Is Castillo going to be around, or we're looking in another direction? Well, I'll let these other guys will probably take a shot at this. My feeling is that I think Juan's going to be back. I just don't know if he's going to be back in the capacity of defensive coordinator. I think that Andy's a pretty loyal guy, and Juan has been with him from the beginning. And I think Andy realizes that he put Juan in a tough spot this year and would like to give him more than one season to prove that he's a defensive coach. But if they can get a better defensive coordinator, if there's a better one out there and they can hire him, I think they would do that. But I would still see, even if that were the case, that I think Juan would have a role here next year. If not as defensive coordinator or somebody on the staff. I think Juan Castillo is going to be back in Philadelphia next season. That's just my guess.
Beasley, you have about as much access to the Eagles locker room as anybody. What do you see on some of these topics, and how do you see it going for next season?
Well, I think as time goes on, it does look like Juan is going to be back. I think if they were going to make a move, we would be hearing more about somebody being interviewed or the team leaning in that direction. So I think he'll be back. And what happens, they get together and there's a major debrief. And so, Andy's asking Juan what went wrong, and they're kind of figuring out where they can get better or place fault. And if Juan can come up with the right answers, I think they're going to be pretty settled there. The team overall, if you can run the ball, and they have the best running back in the National Football League, and if you can knock down the opponent's quarterback, I believe they have the number 2 sacker and a real good statistical position when it comes to knocking down the quarterback, you have a chance. You solve most of your problems in football. The one major problem is you have to keep your quarterback clean. Michael Vick was hit too many times, so either the quarterback has to learn how to get rid of the ball quicker, or the offensive line and the blocking schemes have to improve. That's the third issue, and if they can they can continue the two, straighten out the quarterback, getting knocked down and throwing interceptions. I see no reason why this won't be one of the best teams in the National Football League next year. Nobody wants to hear that because a lot of people wanted to hear that Andy Reid's going to be fired. I think the facts are that if they can keep the quarterback clean, they're going to win a lot of games, go deep into the playoffs, and anything can happen.
Merrill, give me an assessment. You have very good access as well, and powers of observation.
Well, I hope Beasley is right in absolutely everything he says. And I'd also like to thank you for having me here because I've been sitting in the house crying now for 4 weeks. You talked about my 35 years, and I can tell you that of all my 35 years, this is the single most disappointing season that I have ever been part of. You go back to this team that lost to the team that won the Super Bowl last year, the Green Bay Packers. They lost to the Green Bay Packers with a pass that was intercepted on the final play. They come into this season, and they beef up everything. And they bring in 2 outstanding coaches, Howard Mudd for the offensive line, Jim Washburn from Tennessee for the defensive line. They add to this team Nnamdi Asomugha, who is thought to be the best defensive back in all of football, a shutdown corner. They trade and they get Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, and they add people on every side of the ball. They bring in Vince Young to back up Michael Vick. They bring in Ronnie Brown, a former great running back who was the 3rd player picked in the draft. They bolster this team with Cullen Jenkins, a tremendous defensive lineman, Jason Babin, who had a high sack count in Tennessee. They add all these pieces, and they lose 5 leads in the first 5 weeks. I mean, they blow leads in the first 6 weeks. They blow leads game after game after game. They did have some highlights. They did finish with 4 wins, but those wins were against Matt Moore, quarterbacking the Miami Dolphins, and then J.P. Losman, who wasn't even Matt Moore, finishing that game. They came against Stephen McGee in Dallas, who was their 3rd-string quarterback, basically. They played against Mark Sanchez, who really wasn't having a very good year for the Jets. And then they finished against Rex Grossman, who is the best the Washington Redskins, the last-place team, had to offer. So it was a very, very disappointing team. I hope that everything Beasley says turns out to be true. It is a very, very talented team. And the Eagles organization and Jeffrey Lurie are committed to winning. This is what they want. But for me to share Beasley's optimism, they've got to make some moves. They've got to acquire some first-rate linebackers. They need us badly. They have to upgrade things. They have to do more with the coaching staff. They have to, if Juan Castillo was here, they have to give him help. You look at the other teams, and Juan is a good guy, and he's a good coach, and he was an outstanding offensive line coach. But could anybody expect Juan Castillo in his first year to compete with people like Dom Capers, the coordinator in Green Bay, Mike Nolan, who was just named coordinator in Atlanta, Dick LeBeau over in Pittsburgh? You look at these guys, you look at what the Giants have done this year, how they have picked themselves up and gone a long way. You look and people say, well, they didn't have an off season. Well, San Francisco came in with a whole new coaching staff, and they are one win from the Super Bowl. So, yes, I am optimistic. I love this team. I would love to be sitting here next year telling you that we are one step away from the Super Bowl, but things have to happen. Just wishing for it isn't going to do it.
Well, that finishes the entire Eagles question here. Merrill, there's some. No, Vince, you were an ex-Eagle, great special teamer.
Right.
How are what do the special teams now on this team look like to you?
Well, first of all, I miss David Akers. Does anybody out here not miss David Akers? If you're going to root for the 49ers, that's going to be one of the reasons why you root for him, not just because of what he does on the field, but what he's done off the field. From a special teams point of view, and of course, Bees and I, we know a little bit about the game back there, and what you had to do. The first thing is you have to go by the motto of you got to set your hair on fire and cause a wreck. So that's the first thing. And I think they have the guy that's the leader to do that, and that's Bobby April, the special teams coach. He's done a tremendous job, and of course you've got to work the schemes. And sometimes I'm finding with special teams, and I don't know if Ray, you analyze a lot, and Bees, and you see it up there, Merle. Sometimes I think they're just getting a little bit too fancy with some of the things they're doing with special teams. It's really simple. All you have to do is just keep the ball to your inside shoulder, or block the guy to the outside, and just work on those certain fundamentals. And I think the game right now with special teams and Coach Murray down there, my man, who signed me to our first contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. There he is right there. Big $22,000, by the way, that he signed me for. Yeah. Wasn't a no cut either.
He gets $25,000 to give a speech.
Yeah. I give more one speech than I did my first year with the Eagles. Just priced myself out of the Philly market, I'll tell you that. But
hey Vince, our check will bounce today.
I just love Bobby April, and the skill guys and the rookie kickers that they've got there. They did a pretty adequate job, and they got it done. But you just had to watch the way the 49ers again were going. And that whole strategy that they were using was knowing that they had a guy there that was going to put some points on the board when they needed it, and he threw 9 up there with field goals. And if they needed to get down to a certain area within 40 yards, so it really affects, I think, your game planning and the way you're going to play the game. And special teams, and Coach Vermeil will tell you, is without a doubt one of the most important parts of the game because it sets the tempo. So I'm pretty happy with the special teams. Deshaun, would just either, run the ball straight downfield, quit running out of bounds, and quit all this other stuff when you make a big play. But I do like Chad Hall and some of the great things that he's done. But before I go, I have to introduce somebody to you because you got a misnomer. Anybody see the movie, by the way? Anybody see Invincible? I have to notice it. Yeah? Okay. The stinking Giants. I mean, they're the Giants fans right now, aren't they? They're calling in all the radio stations and in your face. And there's somebody in the movie that's portrayed as a Giants fan. We got to set the record straight. There's my wife right back there. There's my wife, Janet. And not a Giants fan. USA World Gymnastics team, University of Penn's head gymnastics coach, and traveled and coached all over the world on behalf of gymnastics. Our wife of 18 years. We have all these Temple grads up here, and my daughter Gabriella just got accepted to Syracuse, #1 basketball team in the nation. So, yeah. And she's going to get into this racket. Wait till she starts. So keep an eye out in about 5 years when you see Gabriella Papale reporting on the sidelines for ESPN. So that'll be my girl.
Okay. Bill Vargus, you've observed the Eagles for quite a while. Give me your thoughts.
Okay, Joe. First of all, just what a pleasure it is always to be broadcast pioneers. So many great people in this business that I worked with. And some of them going back to the late 70s when I was at Temple working at WIP, like Tom Moran and Tom LeMaine. And congratulations, Tom LeMaine, the new public address announcer of the Philadelphia 76ers. Yeah. Another job I didn't get. You know, Jeff Lurie had his news conference recently, and he was asked about the arrogance of Andy Reid. If you've ever met Andy Reid, he is, as Jeff Lurie said, as down to earth as any coach you would ever want to meet. The man has no arrogance whatsoever on a personal level. Then Lurie said that if he saw any rigidity in his coach, he would have made a change. Well, to me, Andy Reid is the absolute height of rigidity. Absolutely refuses to change. So many times in the past at a news conference, I would ask him, Andy, you were running the ball effectively, why did you stop running it? And he would say, well, in hindsight, I should have run it more. And then the next week come out and not run the ball. So we all have seen it over and over and over. We saw it again this year. Here they are, they're losing games, and as everybody mentioned, LaShawn McCoy, their running back, is their best player, and he actually had a game where he gave LaShawn McCoy the ball, or he and Marty gave him the ball 9 times, and they lost, which is crazy. Next game, 11 times, and they lost. And everybody in this town is screaming, you got to run the ball, Andy, you got to run the ball. So the next week he comes out and McCoy carries 28 times and they win. Then the following week, 30 carries for McCoy and they win. So what happens, right? He figures it out fine? No. The following week he goes back to 16 carries for McCoy and they lose. And then after that, 14 carries and they lose. And everybody in this town knew it was going to happen. They knew that he didn't get religion, that it is just, it's almost like he has to do it his way. Whether win, lose, or draw, he has to do it his way, and he's not going to change. And it's the same thing on the other side of the ball. So as Merrill mentioned, they go out and they make all these changes in the offseason. They bring in all these players. Every one of them has to do with pass defense. Nobody to shore up the run, no linebackers. Bring in a coach who plays a defensive line system that's built to rush the passer, but leaves you susceptible in the run. And does anybody figure it out? Maybe after the first play from scrimmage when Steve Jackson goes 47 yards untouched up the middle for a touchdown, or maybe the following week when Michael Turner rushes for 114 yards and Atlanta beats him, or 2 weeks later when Frank Gore rushes for 127 yards on just 15 carries and San Francisco beats him, or the following week when Fred Jackson rushes for 111 yards for Buffalo. And still, Jeff Lurie will stand up here at the end of the season and say, it was unfathomable that we could lose, but he doesn't seem to know why. Nobody seems to be able to figure out why. You got a coach who only sees, he's got a myopic mentality. He only sees the importance of the pass. He doesn't understand or care about the importance of running the ball or defending against the run. And he's making all the decisions. He hires the general manager so that he has nobody in the front office telling him, Andy, before you go out and get a third starting cornerback, maybe we should get one linebacker. He hires the coaches. So I don't see any point or reason why, as long as they have Andy Reid running the whole show, nobody to stand up to him and tell him otherwise, I don't see any reason to be optimistic about anything changing in the future. Sorry to say.
As Andy would say, I've just got to do a better job. Let's go to Jim Melwert, one of the young up-and-comers, seen the sports scene, even though basic reporter for news, which is how I broke into the business as a news reporter. Jim, idea about what you think about the Eagles?
Well, let me take what I say with a grain of salt. I used to host a high school football scoreboard show, or a high school football talk show. And I was out in Harrisburg, and there was a kid out at Bishop McDevitt in Harrisburg who was just a great running back, and everybody was talking about how great this kid was. And I went to see him a couple games, and they had this fantastic offensive line. The kid wasn't touched before he got to the secondary. And so I started saying, you know what, I don't think he's that good. I think it's the offensive line. Well, that kid's LaShawn McCoy. So I've been doing news ever since. So,
all right, Jim, you're off the panel. Go ahead.
I agree with what everybody said, but especially Merrill. And I think when you look at the move to make Castillo the defensive coordinator, you have to look back at those games that they blew the second half leads. And just from sitting on the couch watching the games with no access, just being a fan, you have to wonder if there could have been more changes. You know, if they could have made the changes in the second half that they needed to make, and they could have won those games, this would have been a different season. At least that's my opinion. Having a year under his belt, will it help? I hope so, but I don't know. And I think it also goes with the head coach, you know, who said that when you're not willing to make changes and you think you're smarter than everybody else at times, you know, can they make the changes that need to be made?
Okay. Quickly, you guys brought up a number of topics, which I was just going to interject in here. First of all, how will Michael Vick hold up? As Beasley said, he gets hit too often, which is pretty obvious. I mean, he's grass-stained every time the game's over, but it just blends into the green. Also, is Vince Young an adequate backup quarterback? What are the plans for Mike Kafka? What about, as you had mentioned, drafting good linebackers? Anybody want to jump in and say a few?
Let me just add one little caveat. You can get 9 baseball players from another planet, play a baseball game error-free. This is not that game. When they had an opportunity to make a talent grab, they took it. This coming year is the year. This coming season is the season. Now they know that DRC is not, you can't blitz him. He's not very physical. Now they know that Nnamdi Asomugha can only play bump and run. There are things that they had to learn. They made a talent grab when they had the opportunity. It takes a year in football. I think this coming year is going to be awesome. And I'm going to stand right here and stand up in front of all these guys this particular meeting next year and say, I told you so. This is not, I'm not enthusiastic. I'm a former Giant. I'm not optimistic. I'm a former Giant. My guys are still playing. I have no reason to blow smoke here. It takes a year. This coming year is going to be awesome.
I can't wait to get home and call Cindy and tell her she can decorate the family room with playoff money. These are great things to hear, and I really hope this is true. But there are moments that they have to revisit. There are things they have to do better, and they have to take advantage of every opportunity to add pieces. All the pieces aren't here, but Beasley says Beasley is optimistic. I'm always optimistic, and I can tell you when I go to training camp, I will be 5 feet in the air with enthusiasm and excitement, and hopefully everything will come true. And this team does. I agree with Beasley. This team has an awful lot of talent, but that defense has to be better. It absolutely has to be better.
Ray, I got to put you on the spot. You're the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles. What are you doing this offseason?
Well, I think it's already been sort of touched on, is you really need to get better linebackers. You need to improve your safety play. This was the worst tackling secondary I've ever seen this year. It was terrible. It was embarrassing, okay? And so you can't go into next season with this group of guys playing the way they played this year, or you're not going to beat anybody.
Samuel hasn't made a tackle since he's been here, hasn't he?
Well, he won't be here next year.
He doesn't tackle.
He won't be here next year. But, yeah, I mean, they have to get – if you look at one of the reasons the San Francisco 49ers are where they are right now is they are a tough, physical, bring-it-at-you defensive football team. I mean, they rock people. It's why they led the league in takeaways. It's why they led the league in giveaway takeaway ratio, because they knocked the ball loose. They tackled, and you saw it last week against a really good Saints team. I mean, they forced those mistakes by being physical. The Eagles need to become that kind of team again. We've seen that defense in this town before. I mean, we've had physical defenses before. This isn't it. So that's one of the areas they have to address. And on offense, Joe asked about Vince Young. No, Vince Young will not be here next year. One of the things that you have to have, and I agree Mike Vick is key to this team's success, but it's going to be hard to get Mike Vick through 16 games. He's never been that kind of player. The way he plays, he's going to miss games. So you're going to need a backup quarterback who can step in and play with some confidence and give your team some confidence, and that's not Vince Young. They'll have to go get themselves a better backup quarterback. Mike Kafka's not ready to be that guy. The Eagles have to go out and find that guy.
Ray, the only thing is, and I'm a big believer in Michael Vick's talent, and he's a worker. He really has dedicated himself. But I thought in the last 4 games, I take the results to mean nothing, but I thought Michael Vick came back from his injury, and he was more judicious in running the football. He got out of bounds. He did go down, and he got rid of the ball more quickly. I thought in the last 4 games, he preserved himself a lot more intelligently. I thought he did a good job in the last 4 games of that, and that's what's got to continue. I think he can change.
Vince,
I'd be surprised.
Yeah, well,
Vince, you're chapping at the bit there.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to point out one thing. Everybody's pointing a finger at the defense, not getting it. They're blowing the lead in the second half. I'm not a stats kind of guy, but I bet you if you go back and take a look at the stats of how many offensive points were scored by the Eagles in the second half, that they weren't keeping up either. So there's got to be some sort of a readjustment from the offensive point of view. Obviously, the defense on the other side is making the adjustments, and the offense isn't making the adjustments. And I think that goes with the rigidity that was talked about right here by Bill. But I don't care how good a team you have. If you don't have these 2 main ingredients, you're not going to go anywhere. And it's called leadership and chemistry. Leadership and chemistry. And you know, right here, I was, you talk about strangers within the business, and I was as strange as it got when that red light came on the first time. And Brookie says, "You're on the air, baby." And, and I'm in this broadcast business. But you learn, don't you, when you're in this business, what teamwork's all about. You see that person out there that's behind the microphone, whatever it is, there's your quarterback, but you've got so many other people there that are making it work. And that's one of the things that the Eagles are lacking right now. They're lacking that leadership. They're lacking that chemistry. And right now, as Jim Murray would say, one of the things that really brought our team together back in '76 when Dick Vermeil brought it in, he took a look at what he had and he says, you know what? I'm going to come out with nothing but character players. Not characters. We had some characters, but he wanted the character players, right, Coach? And that's what did it. And we have too many guys right now where it's a tail wagging the dog. And you got to get rid of them. And I know some of it was being mentioned tonight or today, who's going to get rid of. But until they get some chemistry in that team and guys learn to be and coexist with each other and get some leadership on both sides of the ball, and also from a coaching point of view, this team's going nowhere.
Wow.
Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Hey, Vince. Just to respond to what Beasley said, I think it was Beasley because I get the twins Beasley Reece and Merrill Reese mixed up all the time.
Long lost brothers.
I think, even though I think you do have something invested in being optimistic about the Eagles because, as you know, when you go into the locker room, Bees, after a loss, it's 1,000 times more difficult than after a win. So we do want the Eagles to win and sometimes maybe be a little bit cockeyed optimistic. Because, look, when you talk about, going back to Joe's question about quarterbacks, everybody's talking about Tim Tebow, right, up in Denver. Look what their coach John Fox did. When he made Tebow the starting quarterback, he realized this guy has the worst, slowest release in the history of the NFL. I'm not going to go throw the ball 30, 40 times a game. He changed his offense. They ran an option offense. They went from throwing the ball 31 times a game with the previous quarterback to 21 times a game with Tebow. And those extra 10 plays mostly consisted of Tebow running the ball. When Michael Vick got hurt, what did Andy Reid do with Vince Young, who's also big and strong and also has a terrible delivery? He actually increased the number of times he was throwing the ball. They went from throwing 32 times a game with Vick to 38 times with Vince Young. And then you have games where he throws 4 interceptions. So he didn't tailor the offense at all. So I'm kind of beating a dead horse with that, but I just wanted to make that point.
Joe, I just wanted to say, in deference to what Vince said, and I respect Vince's opinion too, and I remember Dick Vermeil talking about you have to have character people to win. And that team had a lot of character people, and this team has a lot of character people. They didn't lose because they don't have character people. Beasley goes in that locker room. Ray knows a lot of the guys. There are some wonderful, dedicated guys on this football team who will give everything and who want to win. And they are character people. Sure, there are a few in the locker room. There are a few in every locker room that aren't that way. But this team has a lot of good people, character people. But I'll go back to Dick Vermeil, and I went to him on the practice field one day when Chuck Noll, the then coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, got into trouble because he referred to Mel Blount, his hard-hitting safety, as being one of the criminal element. And after practice, I said to Dick, very kiddingly, I said, "Do you have any criminal element on this team?" And he said, "No. Do you know where I can find some?" I think it's great to have character people, but you need people like Ed Reed. You need people like Ray Lewis. I don't know that Ray Lewis is a character person. He's got some things in his past, but he is an intimidator. And character people are great, but you need intimidators on that defense too.
Let me have one sentence. Vince said the two things are you said leadership and you said chemistry. When you bring 20 guys onto a team and a bunch of them are all pros and they've been leaders where they came, how do you decide leadership in one season? Are they going to get in the middle of the locker room and fight? No, you play a season together. Chemistry. You bring people from all these different teams. Many of them are all pros already. They're leaders already. When they walk in the room, how do you develop chemistry? Well, you go into a mountain somewhere and spend a week in the woods. You play a season together. This season coming.
Did they
this
make
coming
too many
season is the one that's
with a season where you knew there was going to be a lockout? Did they miscalculate and make too many changes?
The lockout allowed them to grab the talent, people. It was a unique moment in the history of our league where you could go get guys. Then we got guys. This coming season and a couple of seasons out, I think it's going to be pretty awesome here.
By the way, for anyone in the audience that does not know what a special teamer is, maybe one or two of you that don't follow football much, they are the guys that are on the field for kickoffs, for punts, for the place kickers and the punters and so on and so forth. And when they all line up, most of them are not generally starters, but they are good special teamers, guys with their hair on fire like Vince and a few others. In fact, they love to have 11 guys like that every time they get out there.
And they still don't have anybody who can return a kickoff.
That's why the question.
Move the kickoff. First of all, how can you return a kickoff if they're kicking it 8 to 10 yards deep into the end zone? Move the ball back. That rule change just killed it.
Yeah. All right, we've spent a lot of time on the Eagles. We do have to bring up the NFL playoffs this weekend. The Pats are 7.5-point favorites over Baltimore as of yesterday. It might have changed. And the 49ers are 2.5 points over the Giants. Who's going to the Super Bowl there, experts? Ray Didinger.
Well, before the season started, I said New England, Green Bay, Super Bowl. So I'll stay with New England. And the way they're playing right now, I don't have a problem saying that. Giants-San Francisco game, if you could tell me right now which team's going to win the turnover battle, I'll tell you who's going to win the game. I think it's going to come down to that. That's kind of what it came down to for those two teams over the weekend. I think if the weather in San Francisco is this weekend as to what they're forecasting, which is just drenching rain throughout the entire weekend, if that really does come true, Beasley knows this and Vince knows this, what that field is like even on a dry day. If you get rain on it, it's just about unplayable. That would, I think, really enhance the home field advantage for the 49ers. So given the home field advantage, and I really do love their defense, I'm going to take the 49ers. So I'm going to say 49ers, New England Super Bowl.
Bees, what do you think?
I would go, I agree with New England. I just think they will outscore Baltimore. And I think that San Francisco Giants game is pretty much a toss-up. I'm going to go with the Giants because, like Merrill said, this new coach came in here and did all, and this quarterback finally started playing great. It's all so new that I think the leadership and the history together and the chemistry of Eli running a team that went to a Super Bowl they've been together. Coach has been there. So I'll go with the Giants to win that.
Which just goes to show you, even though he says nice things about the Eagles, deep down he is still
I've
Big
never
Blue.
denied that.
Big Blue.
I've never denied that in this town.
I am rooting for the Harbaughs, and John is a close friend of mine, and I'd love to see Baltimore beat New England, but Brady is awfully good right now, and I would have to pick the Patriots. As far as the 49ers are concerned, they are a more complete team, section by section, than the Giants. They've got the great tight ends. They've got the best running back in Gore. They've got a lot of things on the Giants and a much better secondary. They're linebackers. I mean, you talk about Patrick Willis, the best in the game, Navarro Bowman. They are special. But the Giants have the hot quarterback. Eli Manning has been playing like Peyton Manning. Put it all together, I'll pick the 49ers.
Jim?
I say New England and San Francisco, largely for the reasons that Merrill just said, but I'm still not sold on the Giants. After seeing them this season, I think they've just had a couple games where they've been handed the games. So.
Okay, Vince.
Quick Patriots story. My son, he's a 15-year-old, made this little football team called the Little Quakers. And I used to wear number 83, and he came home with number 83 jersey for the Little Quakers. And I looked at him, and I started to cry, and I said, Vinny, I said, how proud I am you're wearing number 83 on my behalf. He looked at me, he said, Dad, what are you crying about? It's about Wes Welker, not you. Right? True story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, go.
Hey, Bill,
So
real quick.
I'm all about, I got to root for those 49ers, and who's going to stop my man Wes Welker, 83, and Tom Brady.
Wes Welker, the wide receiver for the Patriots. Right?
That is correct, yes, sir.
When San Francisco played New Orleans in the playoff in this past week, I picked San Francisco to win because of their great defense, even though New Orleans had, this unbelievably prolific record-setting offense this year. And actually, San Francisco did win, but their defense gave up 2 touchdowns late in the game and almost blew it, and it was their offense that came back and won. So, but if that Frisco defense shows up this week, I think they beat the Giants, and I'm with Ray Didinger. I'll go Patriots and 49ers.
All right, I'm going with the 2 hottest quarterbacks in the game right now, and that's Tom Brady of the Patriots and Eli Manning of the Giants, the way I'm looking at it. But as Ray pointed out, defense and turnovers, boy, they decide games real quick. All right, I've got to bring up Tim Tebow just briefly here. I know you guys, some guys think Boomer Esiason said he shouldn't even be in the league. All I know is I thought he won a national championship down in Florida with his skills and the team that he had around him. And they had to teach a different throwing motion for him when he came to the pros. He was throwing more 75%. Now he had to come over top to get the ball over the top of the big lineman in front of him so he could get the ball to his wide receivers and so forth. The guy, okay, he wears his religion on his sleeve and elsewhere and so forth. But how about Reggie White, who also wore his religion on his sleeve, who gathered all of his players after each game? They got down on the ground and said prayers, both teams together saying their prayers after the games. I can't knock a guy for his religious beliefs no matter what, as long as he's not getting in the way of other people and so forth and trying to force it on somebody else. But people, I think, even though they got hammered by the Patriots, and they are a great offensive team, everybody seems to have forgotten that Tim Tebow was pretty instrumental in beating the Pittsburgh Steelers the week before. So maybe the kid has really got some confidence and some skills that can be further enhanced next season with maybe a different atmosphere as far as Coach John Fox is concerned. So that's my thought on him. Any of you guys that think he should still be in the league or not in the league, I'd like to hear it.
Enjoy him. It's a great thing. Why not? He's having his moment. And, why are people so apt to just rip the guy apart and pull him down just because he doesn't fit into the mold that they think that he should fit into? And I think it's a beautiful thing, and I hope the kid next year comes out and just shuts everybody up.
I think he'll be exposed next year and win less.
He's a virgin.
That's what Madonna said.
The man's a virgin. And we have a problem with that apparently in America. What is wrong with him pointing up to the sky after he wins a game?
Thank you.
So what? The test is how you played in college. I thought it was 2 national championships, wasn't it?
Something like that.
He won 2
won 2
national
of them.
championships in college. He's bigger than everybody. He's a more efficient runner than Michael Vick because he doesn't get hurt. When he starts running, he's bigger than the fullbacks. He's bigger than the linebackers. Am I telling the truth?
Yeah, but he throws like the linebackers.
Hey, listen, I like him. I believe in him. And go Tebow.
Yeah, we just talked a lot about leadership or lack of leadership and a lack of character with the Eagles.
See?
And when you see him on the sidelines after a play, the way he's fired up, I mean, if you're playing with a guy like that,
Yeah.
that's
If we
contagious.
really want leadership and character, do we really want it? There it is right there, and people trying to run him out of the league. We got leadership and character.
Let me make the record straight. I never said the Eagles had a lack of character. I talked about our team back in 1976 having character.
The one thing I would say about Tebow is he 2 years in a row, he won the Maxwell Club Award here in Philadelphia as the outstanding college football player. And he came, the dinner was actually in Atlantic City, and he came in those 2 years with his family. And part of my duties on the dinner committee was sort of shepherding the award winners around for a weekend in Atlantic City and asking them to make themselves available for interviews asking them to sign things for the auction and stuff like that. And in the years that I did it, trust me, not all of these guys were easy to deal with. I can tell you that Tim Tebow was as fine a gentleman as I've ever dealt with, and his family is absolutely top shelf. And I think part of the reason that people are critical of Tebow is they feel like this is an act. I think some people have trouble grasping the idea that this is truly, sincerely who he is. And I can tell you, a small sampling, but based on my sampling, he's the genuine article. I mean, he is what he appears to be. I mean, he walks the walk and as he talks the talk, and his family is the same way. I'm rooting for the guy. You know, I mean, there just aren't that many guys out there that espouse what he espouses as openly and fearlessly as he does. Now, is he ever going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback? I don't know, but I think as a role model, he's there for everybody.
Amen.
Okay. Because we talked so much football here, we've got to get some other things before as we're, tempus fugit here. Let's talk about the Phillies, guys, and I got to talk a little bit about their season without Ryan Howard for probably at least 3 months, maybe 4, because the Achilles injury is one of the worst and the most feared injuries that an athlete could ever suffer, because my understanding is you never come back 100%. You might be back 95% and you're still able to play. But as much as I like Ryan Howard, he drives me crazy in the middle of the lineup when he strikes out so many times. And when he strikes out, especially with men on base, nothing absolutely good happens. Nothing moves. I just play around with stats, and he struck out 172 times last season. And in the number of at-bats, what I did was I took all the strikeouts away from what he did all season long and reduced the number of at-bats by that same number of 172. He had 141 hits. That would have put him up at 385 at-bats with 141 hits. Now, what I'm saying is every time he hits the ball and puts it in play, this guy is so far over 300, it's a joke. There are a lot of guys who hit the ball a lot, don't strike out much, and still hit 270. Last year, by doing this, if he had not struck out once and had those only 385 at-bats, his batting average would have been 366. He would have won the batting championship. Would have probably driven in a few more runs. And, it's just, now, everybody's going to strike out. I mean, Joe DiMaggio, going way back, he was so good at putting the bat on the ball. In a 13-and-a-half-year career, he struck out 361 times. The most he struck out in 1 year was, I think, 48 or 49. He hit 369 times. He hit 361 homers. And a lot of his home runs died in the huge Yankee Stadium where the wall was like 457 feet in left center field. But anyway, it just goes to show you that if Ryan Howard could put the bat on the ball more often, everything he hits is generally pretty hard and gets through the infield even if it's a ground ball. And he doesn't have to hit it 600 feet to be a home run every time, but it still counts the same, I understand, if it goes over the fence at 315. So I just wish that all these great batting instructors with the Phillies, like Charlie Manuel, and the guys in the dugout, Greg Gross and so forth, they're great teachers. It feels like that. I don't know the guy. All I can surmise is that is he stubborn? Does he want to make adjustments? He never makes any adjustments in the batting box. Rod Carew won batting championships year after year because he adjusted his feet for every different pitcher he faced. And I interviewed him a number of times, and he said, if you don't adjust your feet to what these guys are throwing, either right-handed or left-handed, you're duck soup. So anyway, on that tirade, how are the Phillies going to do this year without Ryan Howard for the first 3 months?
Hey, Joe, I thought I was a statistical nerd, man. Wow. The league average on batting average on balls in play, by the way, is over 300. So, yeah, of course, if you don't strike out and you make contact, your batting average is going to go up. But I would say that Most of the great home run hitters have struck out a lot. Babe Ruth struck out a lot. Barry Bonds struck out a lot. Albert Pujols is an exception, but they brought back Jim Thome, which I think was a very good move if he's able to play first base at all while Ryan is out. But he strikes out a lot. What he does is he hits home runs, he draws walks, or he strikes out. But he does get on base a lot. So I don't have a real problem with a slugger who strikes out, because Rod Carew is a totally different type of hitter. He's a contact hitter, but he didn't hit home runs.
They don't really pay for those contact hitters. He wouldn't be making $25 million if he didn't hit home runs. And I think that has a lot to I think these guys want to hit home runs. I don't think he's trying to hit your single.
Hey, I'm a fan.
Although he should, Joe. I agree.
I'm a fan of his, but his
I agree,
home run
but
production
he's
has
trying to
gone
hit
down
home
each year.
runs.
That's true. The numbers have gone down each year. But you mentioned how many strikeouts? 170-something?
171.
All right. So the
I'm
previous
sorry, 172 last year.
the previous year, I think, was 191. So
yeah,
see,
and
his
the year before
strikeouts
that
are going
was
down.
over 200.
Better.
Mickey Mantle once said, he said, I struck out 2,500 times in my career. That's an average of 5 years at 500 each year. I went 5 years without hitting the ball. I mean, that's what Mickey Mantle said. So anyway, I'm just trying to move those runners, and I'd love to see Ryan Howard just driving. I think the guy's
he wants to make them
capable
trot.
of driving in 170 runs. I mean, that's what he's capable of doing. I hope he comes back.
Power hitters and cleanup hitters and great home run hitters do strike out. I mean, that's just, I remember when Mike Schmidt hit his 500th home run, the newspaper asked me to do a whole series of articles about the 500 home run club, the guys at that point that had hit 500 home runs, and I began doing the research. And one of the things that just jumped off the page at me was how many times these guys struck out. All of them. From Babe Ruth to Harmon Killebrew to Reggie Jackson had the record at the time that he retired. It's probably been broken since. But the only one guy in that group that was an exception to that was Ted Williams, who was an exception to many rules. I mean, he was a great power hitter who also was a great contact hitter. The rest of those guys swing from the heels, and they're going to hit home runs, but they're also going to strike out. That's part of the package.
How are the Phillies going to do with Papale in the bullpen now? No Ryan Madsen. Is that an upgrade, or and plus the fact you got the big three of Holiday, Lee, and Hamels, who are well over 1,000, maybe 1,500 innings per guy. Now they're still at the height of their careers, but is this team just going to continue to win as they have done over the last 5 years? Anybody got?
I think a window is closing, and I think they recognize that by giving this kid Cole Hamels $15 million for 1 year instead of signing him to a long-term deal. I think this coming year is a very important year for them. There's so much money on their payroll that they may have to allow him to go. You know what I mean there. So I think it's very. I think we should be anticipating that they need to win this one this year.
Yeah,
before they start letting some people go.
It's an older 30-year-old infield. Everybody's in their low 30s, which is right at the height of your career, but some of them, the downslide begins shortly after that.
I agree with you.
Okay, quickly, let's talk about 76ers. Are these guys for real? They're 10-3. They're in first place by 4 games, and they now have a long homestand and have done most of this on the road. So, I mean, it was a breath of fresh air when they hired Doug Collins. I think this guy's one of the great basketball coaches in pro ball, and if you ever hear him do analyst jobs on television, this guy explains everything about what's going on, and it's so clear and concise, and I think that's how he's really gotten his locker room to chime into him.
Well, they're fun to watch, which you couldn't have said a couple years ago. I think the next 3 games will tell you a lot. They have Denver, Atlanta, and the Miami Heat are their next 3 games. You know, they've been the beneficiary of playing some weak teams to get to 10-3. Not to take anything away from them, but that's just the facts. The next 3 games, Denver, Atlanta, and Miami, you'll see them up against better competition. You'll have a better barometer on just what they are. But no doubt they'll be a playoff team, and hey, they're worth going down to see for a change, and that's progress.
The way you separate yourself from bums is to beat the bums. So they beat the bums, and now we'll see how they do against real good teams.
I think the big key is that they hired Tom LeMaine. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
That was the key, right? That way, Tommy.
You know, the thing, Joe, about basketball is it kind of is like what Beasley was saying about home run hitters. You can score 1,000 points and make a whole lot of money, or you could play defense and nobody recognizes you and you win championships. And that's why the San Antonio Spurs every other year seem to win a championship, even though they don't have a lot of superstars, although Tim Duncan is a superstar, but he's a very unselfish player. And everybody thought when Allen Iverson went to Denver, well, they have Allen, they have Carmelo Anthony, they're going to win, and they won nothing, right? Because all they do is score points, but they don't stop anybody else from scoring. So it all comes down to if you can get players to buy into the idea that if they play defense, rebound, do all the little things that don't show up in a box score, they'll win, and that's more important than scoring a whole lot of points and making a whole lot of money. And oftentimes players will score a whole lot of points and make a lot of money for the first half of their careers, and then they settle down and say, okay, now I want to win a championship before I'm done. And they start to change the way they play. Well, somehow Doug Collins has gotten this group of young players to buy into that and to do all the little things, and that's why they are where they are.
I was just going to say that, Bill. They've really bought into Doug Collins. And I think that's the key in his philosophy, and defense is obviously one of the things that he's stressing. But if you know, it's really refreshing that when you watch this team after every game and the interviews they do with any one of the players, it's all about the team. It's all about the team. And that's really nice to see.
Yeah.
I think the problem they're running into right now is from an attendance standpoint is they don't have the star. But they are playing a team game. I think they're a lot more fun to watch probably than the Iverson years. As they start winning, assuming they do start winning, the fans are going to come. And I think this team is for real.
Well, people will keep coming as long as they keep winning, that's for sure. But they've got guys on the bench who really could be starters at other ball clubs. I mean, Lou Williams could probably average 25 points a game somewhere else, but he's bought into the fact that they bring him off the bench and he's still hitting 18, 20 points. And, Drew Holiday is a budding big star. I mean, they've got some big talent. If they had that one big guy in the middle who could be dominant, and I know Spencer Hawes has gotten off to a pretty good start, and Elton Brand is healthy, and he makes his contributions too. It is kind of a fun team to watch, and it's certainly a difference of what we've had to put up with over the last couple of years, or in recent years. So it's good to see. Anybody want to say anything about the Flyers, who just are right there, but they're going to have to be playing for quite a while without Chris Pronger? Nobody has an idea as to when he'll be back because of his concussion symptoms. But Claude Giroux, they've got Yager playing well. Guys that you wouldn't expect. They got rookies, Coutier and also Van Riemsdyk. And Peter Lavalette has been doing a real good job. So it looks like it's going to be another good year for the Flyers. And, of course, if they can get Pronger back, play defense, it's going to help them even more. Anybody?
It's been amazing the way that the team's had rookies step up this year. The problem with hockey is rookies disappear in the playoffs. So I don't expect to see a deep run from them this year in the playoffs. That said, the experience that these kids are getting next year you can also, replacing a guy like Pronger's all but impossible. And to have to do that mid-season is difficult. So next year when you can build a team around some different players, get the defense, and I think the goalies are fine. Everybody's panicking about the goalies. These two guys are fine. They'll work it out. So not this year, but next year, I think, for the Flyers.
I have a problem with the helmets that they wear in the National Hockey League. I've been railing against this for many years and told to shut up and stay in my own sport. But what almost happened to Giroux, a talented kid like that. What happened to Pronger? You can go back to Lindros. I saw a guy, I used to cover the Whalers in Hartford. I saw a guy get his throat cut by his skate, and you could actually see the pulse of his heart. It's ridiculous, the helmets that they wear. It should be redesigned. There's too many concussions. There's the most concussed sport that we play. It is endangering these guys' life. When they get through, they take their teeth out and put them on the table. They take the teeth out, put them on the table. They need to redesign the helmet, but it's the National Hockey League Players Association and the league. They all should be. They should be in jail.
Well, I think that I agree with you, but at the same time, as you improve the football helmets, the injuries get worse. It's one of those things. As the equipment gets better, the game gets faster. I honestly don't think I don't know that you can change the helmets to protect the way the game's played. It's just so fast now. They're so big. and they hit so hard that I don't know that it's an equipment issue.
Well, that's for the designers to figure out. All right, let's open it up to some questions here. Has anybody got some questions pertaining to any subject? Yes, ma'am.
It's a little bit frivolous, but I'm really interested in your opinion. I have a friend whom you would all know, a sportswriter, sportscaster, who hated the movie Moneyball. Said it wasn't a baseball movie. Now, they do have that disclaimer when they start the film. They say this is not a baseball movie. But all of you who are analysts and statistically inclined and so on, what did you think of that film?
I think, Mima, I would love to have you take me to the Super Bowl with you.
They said to us, when we said, are you taking us to the Super Bowl? They said, you're making so much money from this commercial, you can buy your own ticket.
Wow.
I've never seen the movie yet.
Can't comment. Haven't seen it.
I enjoyed the movie. I mean, it's Hollywood, so it's a little. I mean, he picks up the phone and says, "Hey, you want to make a trade?" The other guy says, "Okay." They say, "All right, done," and they hang up. Listen, in my fantasy league, it takes me 3 hours of working a guy and using every psychological ploy I know to get him to make a trade with me. I don't think it works that way in Major League Baseball. No.
Did any of the rest of you see it?
I didn't see it.
My father said that Brad Pitt was an
I like
overacts.
Warhorse.
I thought the premise. I thought the premise was bogus, so I had a problem with the film. The premise was you go out and buy cheap players, and you can win with cheap players in baseball. It's not really true. I mean, you look at the teams that win. It's the Yankees and Phillies, the teams that spend money. And I've sat there during the whole film feeling that. And then at the end comes the big thing that says that the next year the Boston Red Sox took these principles and went and won their first World Series. Well, no, they didn't. Boston Red Sox spent a fortune to get the best players they could. That's how they won the World Series. So this whole idea that you can nickel and dime yourself and find all these hidden gems and win a World Series, that's what the whole thing was built on. I just don't think it stands up to the facts. You know, I was not enthralled with it throughout. Brad Pitt was very good, by the way. I thought he was really good as Billy Bean. But I mean, I wasn't buying the premise, but then when they threw that thing up there at the end that the Red Sox took these principles and won a World Series, like, come on, it's just the opposite.
Yeah. Any other questions out here?
I have a question for the Reese brothers. Do you think that Jeffrey Lurie should be fired?
By whom, God?
Going to fire himself.
By Tim Tebow?
I think he's been one of the best owners in the history of your town. I don't know what you're talking about. You're all living in fan world. I don't know what you're talking about. You got to go back a many years to have the victories and the fun we've had here.
Whether you agree with him or not, Jeffrey Lurie is passionate about it.
Amazing.
He wants to win. This is not a money thing because the next 40 generations of Luries can live in palatial splendor. He does want to win.
Tell me about the philanthropy award.
And then and they do a lot for the community, a lot for the world, really, in the off-the-field things that they do. But he's a very dedicated and passionate owner and a very nice person.
Show of hands, how many, who would fire Coach Reed if it were up to you? Raise your hand if you fire him. Got a lot of support.
I'll give him one more year.
We like to work.
He earned a mulligan.
Come on, I mean, look. I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding. I'm being facetious.
Who's the co-host of the Andy Reid Show on the radio? I don't think he's going to raise his hand.
For those of you still awake, here we are, right here.
Future is bright. It is so bright, I'm blinded.
Is he going to stay? Is your coach going to hang?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think so for a while.
Yeah.
Do they get to use that new facility? You know, to train and to show recruits? Is that part of the football package? I tell you, those things help recruiting.
I can see the day when they go 10-0, head for a big bowl game, and 18,000 people will be there to watch them.
which is another question. It's obvious there are just too darn many bowl games, and the attendance this year really reflected it all. I'm sure the economy had a lot to do with it as well. How many bowl games would you cut out? Anybody?
I want a playoff system.
Playoff system.
I would create one bowl called the Toilet Bowl, and I'd take all those other bowl games and flush it down that way.
You know, I have to say that, yeah, there were probably too many bowl games, but I had the privilege of working with ESPN this year and traveling down and doing the BBVA Compass Bowl. You wouldn't know who that is or what it was, but that was SMU versus Pittsburgh. And I also did the Beef O'Brady's Bowl down there and Florida Southern. And, yeah, you know, it's not about that. But if you go down and you're in the community and you see what's going on and the charities and the money's being raised within those communities, and if these schools and some of these schools aren't going to get to any other bowl game other than the BCA bowl games, that's another story. We can revamp that. But to have these bowl games and the networks can shell out the money to do it and to get it on the air, to get those teams down to play against each other, they love it. You see that interaction, the camaraderie, what it does in the community. There's nothing like it. And I would say just, you know, keep it the way it is, but when you get to the national championship and the playoff system, that's a whole different story.
See, that was fun, actually, seeing Temple go to a bowl game and beat Wyoming.
Especially after Wyoming said they didn't even know where they were.
And that's right, it's about those memories.
Joe, tell them the story about the little guy in the strike zone.
Oh, well, I mean, if you're watch anything about baseball history, Jerry didn't know this story. Probably any baseball fan, real baseball fan, would have heard this. But back in 1946, I guess it was, Bill Veeck, who was the owner of the old St. Louis Browns, on Sunday afternoon they're playing the Chicago White Sox. And it's a tight game, and he sends up a pinch hitter with men on base, 3 men on base. And I think the Browns were down by a run. And the pinch hitter happened to be a 4-foot 6-inch midget named Eddie Goodell. And the umpire stopped the game and he said, "Wait a minute." He said, "I got to have the office staff come down. I got to see a contract." Darn if the guy in the dugout knew that he was going to be called on, and runs out and he's got a legitimate contract with Eddie Goodell. There was a left-hander on the mound named Bob Kane, who was a pretty good control pitcher. He threw 4 pitches. They weren't anywhere near the strike zone of Eddie Goodell, which was about that big. And he walked in a run. The Browns tied the game and won the game in extra innings. And right after the game, Eddie Goodell was fired. So there is a method in madness. Bill Veeck was one of the great showmen in baseball history. He also later owned the Chicago White Sox. And he was responsible for all the fireworks displays that you see in stadiums today. He was the first guy that brought fireworks to the games. And, you know, he wrote a book called Veeck as in Wreck. And he was that kind of a guy, but he was a wonderful man to talk to. And he was an Army veteran, and he actually lost part of a leg and had a wooden stump that he walked around on. But he would sit out in the bleachers with the fans during the games and sit there sweating because it was hot and handing out beers to people. So he was quite a character. Jerry seemed to like the story anyway. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. I'm Bill Wright. They call me the Rebel. And part of the reason I'm called the Rebel is I'm from Alabama, number 1 in the nation.
Alabama.
Well,
Roll Tide.
Yeah, the Tide put one on LSU, that's for sure. Oh, got any more questions out here? Way in the back.
What about Joe Paterno?
Oh, Lord.
We haven't got time for that
There
one.
goes another hour.
That's a separate luncheon.
I covered Penn State for a while, and I'll just say that with all due respect to Joe Paterno, they created a very secret bubble around that team. And I think there was a certain arrogance that no one could question anything that they did. And when you have that kind of secrecy, things like this can happen. I'm not blaming anybody for it, just saying when you have that much secrecy, things like this can fester.
Well, my only question is the wonderful group of people who fired him I want to know what they knew about it, because everybody seems to think that everybody at Penn State knew about what was going on. So if you're going to fire Joe Paterno, fire them all. Get them out of there and put a whole new regime in. That's my feeling. Yeah.
Akers had a good year. How come the Eagles got rid of him?
That's not for me to answer.
Actually, there's no doubt that they could not get together financially. David Akers was the best kicker in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. However, there is attrition that goes on every football team, and they drafted a kicker out of Nebraska, Alex Henry, who's 23 years old, and he missed 3 field goals all year. He was 23 for 26.
Yeah, he had a great year.
He connected on his last 16 field goals and could be their kicker for the next 12 to 15 years. So those things do happen. It's like the Dawkins thing. You miss them, but there is attrition that takes place.
Right.
And I don't think with Akers, as well as he played this year, that they made a mistake in that one area.
David would have been here if he was not at the end of his contract. His
Right.
contract had run out at the end of last year, so he had to get
right.
a new contract. So that was it. They would have had to negotiate a new one, and David wanted 3 years for significant money, and they weren't prepared to go there. But I mean, I would have kept him. I would have found a way to keep him because, as Merrill said, he's the best kicker in the history of the franchise. And he went to San Francisco, and he's a big reason they're still playing. I mean, he kicked 44 field goals this year, set the league record, and also set the league record for points. It's obvious he hadn't lost anything off his fastball.
But you know what?
But he just came to the end of his contract, and they just didn't want to do a new deal.
The interesting thing, though, Ray, is everyone says, well, Alex Henry missed the 2 field goals in the San Francisco game. But in that game, David Akers missed a short one and had 1 blocked. So, I mean, Akers had a great season, a record-setting season. But the Eagles really have themselves an outstanding young kicker.
Switch kickers, and the Eagles would have won that game, and they might be playing this weekend. That extra win would put them at 9-7.
Yeah.
They would have won the division.
But he missed 2.
I understand.
All right.
I'm just throwing some stuff out there.
That game was
It's
in
my job.
Go Big Blue.
That game was in San Francisco, right?
No, here.
Oh, it was here. Oh, that one you're talking about here.
Yeah.
I worked in
Akers
San
would've won that
Francisco
game.
for a year and a half, and at that time, the Giants baseball team played at Candlestick Park. Candlestick Park is out on a peninsula in the Back Bay, and the wind blows like you have never, ever seen it, all the time. There was a famous World Series whereby Stu Miller, a right-handed reliever, was actually blown off the mound and sprawled 10 feet off the mound because of the wind, right in the middle of a pitch, just about. Willie Mays played at the end of his career in San Francisco in that ballpark and probably lost 100 home runs that would have gone out of any other park except that one, because a lot of his power was to right center field, and that wind was coming in right off the bay and blowing it right back 50 feet in front of the fence, and the outfielders would run way back. Some of them dropped in for doubles because they thought it was going to be near the wall. So, and not only that, the worst part of San Francisco was that that's the only time I've ever gone to a baseball game in August where I had to wear my overcoat. That drove you crazy. So that's Candlestick Park, and that's where the 49ers still play. And it's, as the guys have said, it's a wet field almost all the time because it depends on the tide, which is coming right up and lapping up against the stadium. One last question about golf. Is Tiger Woods going to win this year? All you golfers up here.
Yes, I think he's back. And I watched him in the tournament that he played, and he's got all the physical ability that he ever had, and it's just a matter of getting refocused. And I think he wins a major this year.
Beasley?
I've always... No, I better not say that. Oh, I'll say it just so you don't think I was thinking anything bad. You know, he was once a Tiger, then he wasn't again. He was embarrassed, the fall from grace. He no longer intimidates the other players. He lost a lot with his whatever you call it, fooling around with his bad decisions, his immoral actions.
His anti-Tebowing.
His anti-Tebowing. He lost a certain presence among the other players. So I don't think he'll ever have the dominance over those guys. They simply don't fear him anymore. I think he'll win some tournaments, but I think we saw Tiger. He did enough. He won enough.
He's just changed his swing so many times. That's really a puzzle to me. If a guy that's won so many times, how do you change a good thing? But he knows a heck of a lot more about it than I do.
He is still the most talented player in the world.
Yeah, there's no question about it. He's got tremendous
he's
talent.
Not up here anymore. He's embarrassed. When he walks out there, a lot of us are looking at him saying, that guy did that to his wife and kids. You know, he knows that that's going on. That changes how powerful you are.
He's talented, but in that game, you got to do it 4 days in a row, or you're going to be an also-ran. Well, I want to thank our panel, ladies and gentlemen: Ray Didinger, Beasley Reece, Merrill Reese, Tim Melwert, Vince Papale, Bill Vargus. I'm Joe Pellegrino. I need your vote.
Yeah, thanks.